And this week his guest is the greatest of post-war Wagnerian baritones, Hans Hotter.
That sound, the prelude to Parsifal, that comes welling, or perhaps rather stealing out of the semi-darkness of the Festspielhaus at Bayreuth. There's nothing quite like it, I think, to any opera goer. And that particular sound comes from the 1962 live recording conducted by Hans Knappersbusch, with you, Hans Hotter, singing Gurnemanz. If it's an extraordinary place for the audience to sit, that theatre, what is it like to sing in? Is it easy to sing in?
Yeah, it's one of the easiest places, one of the places where the voice feels at home. It's really amazing. So it doesn't, for the singer on stage, it doesn't come out of yourself. You don't realize how good the acoustic conditions are. But once you're used to the house, you realize that you can sing even with half of... In fact, if you sing too loud, it's not so good.
Certainly listening to this recording of Gurnemanz, that you sing very softly. And you can dare to do this in this theatre, because you know it will...
The part of Gurnemanz seems to me so often misunderstood. Very often Gurnemanz is used for the singers as a possibility to show off with the voice. And the pompous way it's so often done, I think, is exactly contrary to what Wagner, I think, had in mind with this figure. The simplicity, the natural way of feeling and acting and speaking, which comes out of Gurnemanz, is something you have to feel. You cannot learn it. It's the naivety of a person which has nothing to do with primitiveness. Wieland Wagner always used to compare it with the life in a cloister, where you have the padres and the fratres. And he said he definitely is none of the intellectual one. He is rather a very simple person, and his job is to have an eye on the younger ones. And this sometimes happens not in all too soft a way. Sometimes he gets a little tough and rough in his note, and I think that adds very much to this, and it gives you the possibility of the variety between the dignity of words sometimes and the very much down-to-earth way of talking, the way he talks to the youngest, and even to Parsifal sometimes, on certain occasions. He has anything but a gentle and friendly way to talk. And I think this is something which is so often misunderstood. Singers so often think once they have this costume, they have to be constantly full of dignity and solemn and ceremonial and all that. It's right at its time, but I think it is just the contrast between this and the very human and the very natural reaction on anything which happens, which makes this figure so interesting. And I think he certainly is, as we said, a simple person, naive, but he has the generosity of a great personality, which I think just by itself comes out dignified and precious, I would say. To pronounce the words, just the words sometimes, gives you sheer pleasure.
How different are the demands vocally of Gurnemanz from the other great Wagner roles that you sang? I mean, from Wotan, Kurvenal, Dutchman. Does it make a very different demand on your technique?
Now, I think Wagner has called most of his bass key parts, either baritone or bass, most of them only basses. but certainly among those basses there are quite a few baritones. Now, definitely there are a few which have the black sound of a bass, like the Landgraf, for instance, in Tannhäuser, or there are quite a few. Personally speaking, Gurnemanz is just in the voice. It just fits my voice. You know, you always have, as an opera singer, to adjust yourself to certain parts, and there are parts which are perhaps a bit on the lower side or a bit on the higher side, and you have to learn to do this. But with Gurnemanz, it's a part which I think, once it's over, after so many hours, I could start again, because it just fits my voice.
Really?
And this is something which, of course, helps to be fond of a part like this.
Mm. Is there a greater demand for legato singing in Gurnemanz than in the other?
I think the demand in Gurnemanz lies in the constant low tempi. We all know that the great Hans Knappersbusch has been famous for being very slow, which I deny. I think at certain times, of course, it was slow, but there were passages, and one always forgets them, where he's very much going forward, and sometimes even faster than most of the great conductors are. But there is a tendency throughout the whole part of Gurnemanz. The part is slow most of the time. And that is important, that you do not, of course, you get a bore very soon. If you just sing slow and always keep the same color in your voice, dignified and beautiful as it may be, but it gets boring. And to find the colors, and therefore it's so good to know that the figure has various aspects, various sides that give you the chance to color the part in so many ways. And this, I think, is most important with Gurnemanz, because it's inducing to go on always singing just beautifully and forget about the importance of the words. But I do not mean this way of spitting the words. It's been the habit 60 or 80 years ago, I still realize. And even in Bayreuth, there has been the habit. It was the time of Cosima still, where they overdid this pronouncing. This I do not mean, but it's a natural way.
I think what is so interesting about hearing performances of Parsifal conducted by Knappersbusch from Bayreuth is that American singers or French singers seem to fit exactly into the performance. Did he take great care with preparation of those performances? Would he coach the singers individually?
No, it's one thing one should almost not say, but it's true. Knappersbusch hated rehearsals. And he always said the best thing is if we don't know each other, and you know the work, and I know it, why shouldn't it go well? Basically, he was the great magician of the evening, when he was down there in the pit. But he also gave you the possibility of pronouncing something, and he could feel if there's a word which you especially should now pronounce. Then he would give you the time to pronounce it, do it.
The beginning of the opera, I mean, it starts very quietly, the preparation for Amfortas's bath, Kundry in the ointment, the way the nicest side of Gurnemanz defending Kundry from what the knights and the pages say about her. And I suppose it's the first mention of the spear is when suddenly the opera moves on to a higher level.
That's right.
When you sing of the Wunden, it's a wonderful long word.
Wundervoll, yeah, that's the word.
When the whole colour of the drama changes, you tell the pages and knights how the spear came into enemy hands, how Amfortas lost it to Klingsor, how Amfortas was wounded, and that is the wound that will never heal. They ask who Klingsor was, and you answer. You tell how the Grail was brought to Titterel, how Montsalvat was built, and how Klingsor was excluded from the Brotherhood of Knights. It's never said what his sin was. What can you imagine his sin was?
I think the fact that Wagner didn't specify or didn't clearly say what it was, proves that the imagination, whoever, should have his own explanation, which one needn't to talk about. It could be a very obvious sin, or it could be a sin against the rules, or it could be any revolutionary thought of anything in the order of the system. It could be anything, but certainly grave.
And then the idea that I think the symbol is that he disfigures himself. So perhaps castrates himself or whatever.
Could be.
To think this is a way in, because he would then be without the possibility of sin. And he's still excluded. Why should any human being be beyond redemption, beyond saving?
I think it's most interesting to think about the fact that Wagner, almost in all his operas, has this problem or the fact of saving, to be saved, whether it's Dutchman or whether it's Tannhäuser or whether it's Parsifal or Kundry, they all are to be saved. It may have to do, psychologically speaking, something with Wagner's character, I'm almost sure. And he often, and this is what Wieland Wagner kept telling us, do not consider Parsifal a religious opera. It's not religious. It's an opera which Wagner used the elements of religion in order to bring his problems, his ideas. And as we all know, Wagner had in mind to compose an opera which he called Christ. But then he gave it up because he said Christ is the only person which is not guilty. For a hero, I need somebody who has become guilty of something and needs salvation. But with Gurnemanz, we do not hear any guilt in that sense. He's talking about the guilt or the salvation of others. He's not really having his own experience in building up. And also, I think in most of the operas of Wagner, we have people who have the development of a character. Throughout the opera, there's a development into character in a certain way, mostly upwards and very often also downwards, not with Gurnemanz. He grows in his interest for what he is living for. But there is no way of talking about his own guilt. He doesn't find himself important enough to talk about his own problems.
It's so extraordinary because he dominates the opera.
He dominates.
Or certainly
He dominates.
the outer acts.
Yeah,
But he does nothing, and we know very little about him.
Yeah. Very little about him personally, not at all. There's any personal contact with any of the people. And his relationship towards Parsifal is very, very suspicious from the beginning and grows into this enormous interest, and then, of course, grows almost into a self-humiliating adoration, which is very touching in the end.
You have to create the character out of what you sing, out of your narrations, out of your words. In other parts, you have to look and see possibilities. How do you describe this? How do you describe that part in your character? With Gurnemanz, there's never this problem. He's so open, and anything is clear for him, and there's no doubt. He never doubts anything. And he does never understand anybody, whether it's Klingsor or whether it's Amfortas or whether it's Parsifal, which way they go wrong. He notices it, he makes his remarks about it, but it does never touch him. So Klingsor is denied the possibility of redemption. Perhaps the knights bring their troubles on themselves in that way. The magic garden is created, Amfortas falls, and Gurnemanz ends the narration with the description of the prophecy, durch Mitleid wissend der reine Tor, which is where that part of the opera ends.
besiegt, in seinen Armen liegt die Trauer. Der Speer ist ihm entkommen. Ein Gottesheim, ich hör herbei, und einen Flink so lachend spannt. Die heiligen Speer hat entwandt. Des Königs Flucht gab ich Geleite. Oh, eine Wunde rannt mir ein. Der Speer, der uns zu Lita beibrecht, immer zu Ruhm und Glück.
Gurnemanz's narration, Act 1 of Parsifal, 1962 from Bayreuth, with you, Hans Hotter. Immediately after that, the swan is shot by this strange young man, Parsifal. You talked about the contrasts in the character of Gurnemanz. And here he's quite fierce with this young man.
Yeah, he's wild, and I think it's genuine. He's really shocked by this lack of morals, actually, because the animals for him are as important as anything in nature is important, including human beings.
I was most interested that you said that this is an opera. This is not a religious rite. It is a drama. Of course, you produced it. I think you supervised the Wieland Wagner production at Bayreuth, and you produced it in Hamburg in 1968. Did you play the opera as a drama rather than as a religious? Yes,
definitely.
That's how you see the piece.
Yeah, as a drama in itself, and more or less, of course, in the line I was used from Bayreuth. And I think with Parsifal, how can you possibly think of Parsifal without thinking of Bayreuth? For me, it's so.
It's the only place to hear it.
Yeah, and where Wagner wanted it, he did never think of, especially neither for the Ring as well, nor for Parsifal. He couldn't imagine it somewhere else. And I think this is so important because so often the Ring, more than Parsifal, in other opera houses is hard to sing because the dynamic nominations are meant for Bayreuth. And of course, as soon as you do it the way it's written for Bayreuth, then it gets too loud in the other houses. Therefore, I think this is one of the reasons Wagner really. And I think as it's been his last work, so to say, the culmination of his work, of his life work, was supposed to be Parsifal. And I think if one looks at the Wagnerian life work in that way, then it is definitely the highest point of his. And there are so many people who are not so impressed by Parsifal as far as the music is concerned. But I think one can never separate, who cannot separate, the idea, the production, the words, the scenery from the music when it comes to Wagner.
But you feel in this culmination of his life's work, there's almost a completely new simplicity.
Yeah.
Both to the words and to the musical expression. It is very spare.
Yeah.
Does that make it very different from the other operas to sing?
I was very lucky in a way to have been introduced to Parsifal at a very early stage of my career, actually of my development, because my teacher, Matthäus Römer, who was a tenor, he sang Parsifal in Bayreuth in 1909 and 1910. And so it was normal and quite natural that he very often talked about Bayreuth in connection with Parsifal.
And what sort of things did he tell you?
Well, he told me practical things. And of course, that was the time when Bayreuth still has been, how shall I say, the holy residence of quality. And it's done almost, I said before, the way of pronouncing the words has been a bit on stilts, a bit artificial. And it's the time it belonged, the pathos, which Wieland, by the way, always hated. He hated pathos in any form. And I always tried to tell him, Wieland, there is wrong pathos, and there is a very true, normal pathos. No, he said, I refuse it. You may do it, all right, you do it. But pathos is out of the question. It doesn't exist for me. But I think pathos at that time has been very, may say, pompous. So the way they listen to and they live in this opera has been perhaps, compared to what it is today, a bit artificial. So with all the value and with all this sincerity of what they wanted, but the feeling and the approach to Wagner, and of course this is partly due to Cosima's way of thinking of Wagner. But at that time, I think to sing Wagner, this has been something one cannot compare, and therefore the whole attitude has been not the way it is today. We try to be today.
I'm most interested, you should say, that Wieland hated pathos or false pathos, because it seems to me that Knappertsbusch does as well. There is enormous feeling.
But there's no conductor who projects more pathos than he does. But I think the word pathos in itself has something which smells.
Yes. But the amount of feeling in Knappertsbusch, the feeling becomes welling out.
And pathos, this comes from Greek, it's pathein, it means suffer. It's the same thing what mitleid means, actually. Sympathetic, it's all pathos in it. And I think he was the strongest. He hated the wrong pathos, I think.
And the feeling, the pathos, the compassion, you can't separate it, even though Parsifal is an opera, from the religious symbolism of the work.
Definitely
It is there. Did Wagner felt that? Do you think he felt it personally? Or do you think he felt that the symbolism, the Christian symbolism, was a useful thing to hang?
I think the latter. I think he definitely said, and so did the things Wieland said they are all based on words by my grandfather. I'm not saying anything which I do not relate to him. And I think it's Wagner himself who said, I didn't want to create a new religion. How does one look or think of the word religion altogether? We know religion means something pious. But to what extent Wagner really meant religiously things, I think he just used religion, as I said before, to describe the characters, the sinful, the characters with fault, with guilt. And of course, the salvation in the church, in the religion, is also most important. In the Christian religion, we have the salvation point is very often used. And Christ himself is so much salvation. And there has, of course, the relationship between Parsifal and Christ. There is some, there's no doubt. But not in a religious way.
It is an opera about compassion, isn't it? About understanding.
Oh, yes, I think so, very much. I think Gurnemanz talks very much about compassion. And I think the way of almost being devoted to Parsifal when he talks in the third act to him, in a most touching way to him, when he uses all the possibilities of piano singing. You see, yes. This is what makes the figure so interesting, that he is really convinced this is the miracle. This is the miracle person. This is the salvator. That he is the only one we have waited since ages, and he is now. And I said, he kneels down in front of him.
Well, obviously, we will now play the Good Friday scene. Parsifal has expiated this tiny crime with timeless wandering, has arrived on Good Friday. The spring water is used to cleanse him for his final task, to attend the funeral of Titurel and the unveiling of the Grail. Throughout all this, even when Kundry bathes Parsifal's feet, again, Knappersbusch avoids any sort of sentiment.
Right.
It seems.
Right.
I don't know how he does it. And then there's that wonderful phrase that you have, gesegnet sei der Reine, that legato phrase. I believe you do take a breath, but you jolly well can't hear where you take the breath.
Because it really belongs to it, you know.
Yeah.
And the Reine, durch das Reine, this is something which, in German, of course, has a very strong meaning. That das Reine durch das Reine is something which sometimes I'm convinced that in English language there also are words you can only feel. You cannot really express anything. You either feel it or not.
In the moment where you anoint Parsifal, the future king, at this point,
yeah.
Then Wagner throws, 3-4 top E's at you, which seems so unkind, so late in the evening, rather like with Sachs. Suddenly you have to go up and up.
Yeah, you see, and this is the point, what I said in the beginning. Part of Gurnemanz is so much written into my voice that these top E's, they seem so natural, and no, you say, endeavor.
No problem.
No problem.
You're very lucky.
Yeah. But, of course, I always feel a singer must have not only a voice, precious as it is or not, but he must also have the gift of using the voice at certain times out of inspiration.
Parsifal's first act as king to baptize Kundry, and then, of course, the Karfreitagszauber, the flowers compared to the flowers of the second act. And for me, I mean, the most moving moment almost in any opera when he learns that it is Good Friday and sings that it is a day of mourning, the day that all nature should mourn. And Gurnemanz's reply of Du siehst, das ist nicht so, is very gentle.
And it's so interesting. Du siehst, meaning you will see once I tell you. You will then see, but it's not so. It is hard sometimes when you sing these words which are so very much in your heart and you feel, and not to be stricken by too much emotion, to control yourself. This I find hardest. And this is the words, du siehst, das ist nicht so. As simple and as short it is, it's the whole word in it.
And what follows may be dubious theology, but certainly, perhaps we have Wagner, the ecologist, or the green. This is the day when all nature rejoices through redeemed mankind. Is it possible to sing that music without being moved yourself? Are you able to?
Hard. It's very hard, very hard. You have to learn this control. And in other words, it's better as a performer not have a very subjective feeling for doing something, but rather to describe it. I would say like the evangelist in the Passion describes Christ's sorrows, but he doesn't feel them, but he describes them. And Peter Pears, he proved it, how strong the effect can be if you describe a feeling of somebody else. It may be more moving than if somebody says, I'm the one who suffers, and don't you have pity with me? And the same thing, I think, comes to the point where we've just arrived in Parsifal.
So where it is the control that you have.
Control,
that releases.
Describe your feeling. Describe it. Do not have it yourself.
The Good Friday music from Wagner's Parsifal, with Hans Knappertsbusch conducting the Bayreuth Festival Orchestra in 1962. Parsifal was sung by Jess Thomas and Gurnemanz by Rodney Milnes' guest on hymn repertory, Hans Hotter.